picture, we had a priest on the set all the time, as they always did in any religious picture, to see that everything was according to the proper dogma and everything. This priest's name was Father Devlin, and he was very severe. We couldn't do anything. It was a delicate relationship, a priest and a nun. And the last day of shooting, it was a very sad scene. Father Devlin was watching and everybody else. And I didn't know this had been cooked up between Ingrid and the director. I finally said goodbye, and she took me in her arms and gave me a great big wet kiss. Just give a Father Devlin fainted almost. And I damn near fainted. I couldn't imagine. I thought she'd lost her mind.
Bing Crosby talking about working with Ingrid Bergman during the film The Bells of St. Mary's. Crosby was arguably the most popular entertainer of this century. For nearly 50 years, the old groaner was the biggest single draw in show business. He sold more than 300 million records. For nigh on 20 years, he was the most popular singer in the world and among the top 10 box office draws in Hollywood. When he died, his fortune was reckoned to be in the region of $400 million. He invented a style of singing. He became the arbiter of an effortless manner whereby it was difficult to tell the difference between work and play. We're going to see an interview I did with Bing Crosby in 1972, and I started by asking him if he recalled the very first songs that he sang.
I'd have to dig deep into the dim recesses of a memory that's atrophied by the passage of years. But,
you mean you're forgetful?
Exactly. I think I remember an entertainment at the parish hall whenever my mother rehearsed me in a few songs. None of these songs would be familiar to anybody in this audience or anybody listening on the tube. Would you like to hear a couple of them?
Please, yeah.
Well, I opened with a song, I think it was a Scottish song, called Alice Ben Bolt. It went something like this, Peter. Oh, don't you remember sweet Alice Ben Bolt, sweet Alice with hair so brown? You laughed with delight when she gave you a smile, and you trembled with fear at her frown. On the master's grave grow the lilacs, Ben Bolt, and the running little brook is now dry. And of all the friends who were sweethearts then, there remains, Ben, but you and I. That was my opening. And then we had another little ballad, but this, I don't know if I can remember most of this. This is quite dramatic for a 12-year-old, I tell you, this song. When the twilight of eve dims the sun's last ray, and the shades of the night gather fast, there was one fleeting hour that I'd prayed would stay, full of joy and of pain that's past. Now I'm empty, I can't think. That was my second song. And then I made an exit to rather desultory applause. Just made the exit before it subsided. But I hurried right back, dragging an empty dog leash. And then I burst into song in the following manner. I got a dog named Rover. Here, Rover, come, Rover. He roves around all over. He's only home 3 times a day. I'm looking for my dog called Rover. I'm looking for him now all over. He's a hunter's dog, all right. Say he keeps me hunting day and night. This is what I worry over. Say, who put that rove in Rover? My whistle's getting dry. Sometimes I wish I were a tree then Rover'd have to look for me. Oh, where's that doggone dog of mine? That was my debut.
Marvelous. When you got to that line
When the
about...
hissing subsided, I ran to my companions once again.
When you got to that line about wishing you were a tree with a dog, I thought you'd forgotten this was a Christmas family show, actually.
Ah! Listen, I saw the two Ronnies the other night on television. Anything goes.
Oh, yeah.
And that fellow Mitchell and Till Death Do Us Part.
Yeah. In fact, though, when you started off your sort of adult life, you trained to be a lawyer, didn't you?
Yes, I studied for the law. I had a little dance band at the time. I was the singer and the drummer in the band, and I was studying law at Gonzaga University, school I went to through high school and then to Gonzaga University, and I was studying law part-time and going to school part-time and playing the drums and singing part-time, and I thought I could be a lawyer because I'd been in a lot of elocution contests and belonged to the debating society, and I thought I had a facility for saying things on my feet, and I lulled myself into the belief that I could be a great criminal lawyer, and the drama of the courts appealed to me. But I found out after I'd been working about 6 or 8 months for this lawyer, and he was a very well-known lawyer in the town and a good one, that I was making as much money playing the drums as he was pursuing the law. So I gave up the law and enlarged my entertainment career.
What a very wise choice you made as well.
I guess so, because I'd have been a lousy lawyer.
Who were the influences, the singers who influenced you at that time?
Oh, well, when I was 16 or 17, I used to go down and work in the local theater whenever any of the great touring shows came through town, like Jolson or The Follies or The Passing Show or the Artisan Models or any of those shows when they came through Spokane. I was an assistant in the property department. You know, they sent me on errands from one thing and another. And whenever Jolson was in town, he played there 3 or 4 times with Bombo and Sinbad the Sailor, and I forget some of the others, but I always managed to get a job and watch him. And I'm sure I picked up a lot of hints from, not only from his singing, but from his stage department. He was electric. When he came on the stage, he just generated an electricity that I've never seen duplicated before, unless it was by Frank Sinatra when he gives a concert.
Yes.
No one else, I think, ever achieved that, in my opinion.
You can't define it, can you, what it is?
No, it's the way he moved, his body, his movements, without doing anything sinuous or suggestive, but he was charged up himself, and he communicated that enthusiasm and that electricity to the audience, and they were just on the edge of their seats until he was finished.
The extraordinary thing about Jolson, too, of course, was his voice got better, didn't it? Got better.
He made some appearances. I had a radio show then. He made about 10 straight appearances with us after the picture about his life, the Jolson story. Larry Parks played Al Jolson, and Jolie did the tracks. And it had revived interest in Jolson. He'd semi-retired then, and he did about 10 shows with me on the radio, and I never heard him sing so beautifully. He had a quality, and his range seemed to have improved, and he was 60-some then. And it was amazing.
Yes.
I remember the first time he was on a show with me. It had been a number of years since he'd been a big star. He'd never really done anything else since his big, successful years. And the audience was mostly young people who didn't relate to him very much except from the movie. And I was kind of concerned how he would go. He didn't sing 2 bars of the toot toot tootsie or whatever it was, you know, oh, toot toot tootsie goodbye, and he had them all. They were on their feet cheering all the way through the song, and that night, and of course he was a tremendous success from then on, every time we had him on.
When you went on the road, first of all, as a young man, you went with another musician, didn't you? Just the two of you on the road.
He was the piano player in our little band and the arranger, and we'd worked up some duets together, and we took off from Spokane, Washington. We drove all the way to Los Angeles. His name was Al Rinker, and he had a sister working in Los Angeles in the nightclub down there named Mildred Bailey, who, in my opinion, was one of the great singers of all time.
Marvelous singer.
And she'd established herself in very substantial fashion down there in Los Angeles. And we thought, well, we'll just move in with Mildred and she'll get us set. And that's exactly what happened. She heard us sing a few songs, and she introduced us to a fellow who had a nightclub in town, Mike Lyman's Tent Cafe, and we went on there for several weeks. And we sang a lot of little songs like Mary Lou and In a Little Spanish Town, 'Twas on a Night Like This, and a lot of little doubles. we had a couple of little double entendre things that were rather spicy, you know. I remember one we had, where'd you go, where'd you stay? Sweet mama, where'd you stay last night? When you went away, when you came home. Take your comb, your little shoes weren't laced up tight. You must have met another one, a loving laddie with a loving way. But you'll come back, yes, you'll come back like a dog you had your day. Oh, you must have slept like Aphrodite, because when you went away, you didn't take your nightie. Where'd you go? That was a number we used to use just in the cafes. We didn't do that in vaudeville. We played all up down the coast in the Middle West in vaudeville, and then we finally wound up down in, after a year or two, down in Los Angeles. Paul Whiteman was playing a $1 Million Theater in Los Angeles. We were playing the Metropolitan. And at that time, we'd done pretty well. We had a pretty good little act, I think, and he sent a representative over to hear us, and he was reasonably pleased with our performance, and so we joined Whiteman a week later in Chicago, and we spent almost 3 years with him.
And of course, it was a very big break for you. It was the break, wasn't it?
Oh, that was really got us started.
Yes. You made, in fact, you made that film under some duress, didn't you? Because you were in prison at the time.
Oh, yes. Well, I'd been involved in a little automobile accident, and the band was all out there, and they gave us little automobiles to run around in. I was driving home one night with a young lady. I'd had a few toddies, you know.
This is during Prohibition, too, wasn't it?
Yes, and a fellow ran into me with his car, and... Quite an accident. I took the young lady into the lobby of the nearby hotel to see that she was administered to, and the police arrived, and they said, "You appear to have been drinking." I said, "Yes." They said, "Well, come along." They took me down to the station, locked me up. The next day, Whiteman got me out on bail because we were right in the middle of this picture. And I had to go down about 11 days later for an appearance in front of the judge. So I went down I'd been playing golf. I had on golf knickers and loud socks and a loud sweater, very gaily dressed and sure of myself that there'd be nothing to it. The judge says, "It says here on the complaint you'd been drinking." I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, don't you know there's a prohibition law in the state, in the country?" I said, "Yes, but nobody pays any attention to it." He said, "Well," he says, "you'll have 30 days to pay a lot of attention to it." Bang! And there I was for 30 days, the last half of the sentence, so they let me go out to the set with a policeman in company with me. He had the time of his life, and that's when we did that song.
Amazing.
Endurance Vile, we sang.
You also, of course, apart from singing with the band, you were made to sit in with the orchestra and pretend to play a violin, weren't you?
That was traditional in those days. All the singers in every band were supposed to be instrumentalists, part of the band. And they, of course, the Rhythm Boys, we were sort of extroverts. If we held an instrument in the band, we had to play something, make a noise on it, whether it fit in with the arrangement or not. They tried me on French horn and saxophone, and I couldn't resist, you know, when they're playing some big, heavy arrangement where I'd oompah along, you know, and sometimes I would oompah in the chord, and sometimes I'd oompah in another chord. So they took the instrument one after another away from me. Finally, they gave me a violin with rubber strings. And I could just stroke away on that kid, you know, just really pour away and get the... I was happy with that.
Of course, when you got put in the string section, you got put in with one of the great legendary figures of
Joe Venuti, yeah.
Joe Venuti.
And of course, anything I wanted to do that was comical or funny or out of line, he encouraged that.
Yes. Yes.
One time, I remember we were playing Whiteman was playing the overture 1812, and there's at the end of the overture, if you remember, they're burning Moscow, and the bells are ringing wildly all over. And he had about 6 sets of these bells hanging up, long. And the Rhythm Boys, and Skin Young, another vocalist, and Charlie Gaylord and John Fulton. There were 6 of us. And when this climax comes, it goes for, I don't know how long, a couple of minutes. The orchestra's blaring away, and the bells are ringing wildly, and Moscow's burning. And we were supposed to beat on these bells. Well, we beat hell out of those bells. We shellacked them so well that we finally broke about 6 or 7 sets of bells, and the stage manager come to the Whiteman. He said, "How far do you want these guys to go?" He said, "They're running us out of bells here." Our verve just outlasted the supply of bells.
Poor Whiteman must have been near a heart attack, I can imagine.
Yeah, they gave him an awful time.
I read a marvelous story about Venuti eating Whiteman's violin.
He did that one time, yeah.
How did that happen?
Well, Whiteman always had a violin that he kept on the bandstand, and at one point he'd play 3 o'clock in the morning in the middle of an arrangement, it up. And Whiteman wasn't the greatest violinist in the world. And Joe knew that, and Whiteman was getting ready to play his solo. He was conducting, and just about time they're modulating into 3 o'clock in the morning, and Joe just picked up his violin and made out he was salting it a little and started eating. Whiteman reached down for the violin, and he just picked up a mess of wreckage, you know. And Joe says, "See what you can do with that, Pops." And Joe, this is a little indelicate, but Joe was famous for the raspberry.
Yes.
He could give the most fantastic raspberry I've ever heard. I think raspberry means the same thing here as it does there. Yeah. Only Joe could give it, he could form an armature and with a tremolo. It's a beautiful thing. And he could just blast the walls of a theater. And one time in San Diego, we'd been out on the town. This was a matinee, and everybody came back to play the matinee. And Joe had a long continental luncheon with a lot of Chianti, and he was fairly good shape. I remember we were playing a Victor Herbert medley, and it finished with one of those big Victor Herbert songs. I can't think of the name of it now. It had a big climax, and the band just played up, and Whiteman's leading, and they go dum ta dum tum 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 ta dum tum 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 ta. And Joe stood up and went. But he could do it in perfect tune. His intonation was immaculate, and he had about 3 times that much vowel. And Whiteman was furious, absolutely furious.
When you eventually left Whiteman, he must have been glad to see you go.
Sure.
You were, in fact...
We gave him a rough time, I'm afraid, but we learned a lot, and I'm very grateful to Whiteman and to the band. It was a wonderful opportunity for me.
But then, of course, a new career opened up at the same time, which was movies, wasn't it? And you started work for Max Sennett, didn't you?
Well, before that, Whiteman, I didn't leave him. He let me go, to tell you the truth. The Senate was when I was at the Coconut Grove. That's right.
That was way
Yeah,
before.
I do that in the daytime.
And that was because they were they were shorts, weren't they?
Shorts, 2-reelers, they call them.
Yeah.
They ran about 20 minutes, I think.
I'm sorry to persist in the Senate thing. It's only that we dug up a couple of...
You have?
We have,
I've
yes.
never seen one. I've been dying.
Well, look, I tell you, we've got 2 actually.
I saw them when they first came out, but I haven't seen them since.
Well, that was a fair while ago. They all seem to involve animals and chasers, and this involves you, a piano, and a lion.
Open that door!
I will not. I'm safe here. Nice kitty.
Sheer artistry, huh?
Absolutely. What about some of the other people that you worked with in this period? I'm thinking particularly now about your career in the film industry. You worked with some of the great legendary characters, didn't you? You start with Marion Davis, who was, to say the least, was a protege of William Randolph Hearst.
That's right.
Yeah, what was... she must be an extraordinary character to
Well, I made one picture with her, and that was a career. It took a year to do, because the schedule on that was really casual. They would come on the set about 9 or 10 o'clock. Marion would come on the set. She had an orchestra on the set, a live orchestra, all the time, playing hits of the day, or songs from some of the successful Broadway musicals, you know, Gershwin music or whatever. And then when they get ready to do a scene where they'd subside. And about noon, we maybe had one take, and then we'd go to a long continental luncheon in her bungalow. The word bungalow is not very accurate because it was about 15 rooms, the large dining room. And we'd have the Rhine wines and the pâtés and the caviar and About 3 o'clock we'd go back. Of course, nobody was very good shape to work then. And the band would play, and we'd do a little singing, and we'd get another take, and that would be the end of the day. And that'd be about a 5-day week, and then we'd all go to San Simeon for the weekend. I'd get back sometime Monday before noon. It was great. Great experience.
It must have been an extraordinary place at that time.
Unbelievable. He'd have 60, 75 guests up there for a week or 2 weeks, and the only requirement he insisted upon, you had to be there for dinner, and dinner was 8 o'clock. The rest of the time you could do whatever you pleased, and there was 2 or 3 swimming pools, there were horses to ride, there was some golf not too far away, there was tennis, of course, and you could just amuse and entertain yourself any way you wanted. And the castle itself, San Simeon, was take you 3 or 4 days to see all of that.
In this point in your film career, the studios were sort of pushing you as a sort of great romantic idol, weren't they?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beating up an empty road, I'm afraid.
What lengths did they go to sort of change you physically?
Well, I remember one time they said my ears stuck out too far. Looked like a taxi with both doors open, you know. And so they got the makeup man to study it, and he glued them back. Then I looked like a whippet in full flight. And that glue used to itch back there, you know. And of course, in those days, they used a lot more light when they were lighting a set than they do now. And it's very hot in a set, and that'd make the glue come loose, and they'd pop out, and then it'd be cut, and back to the makeup department, big glue job again. And so one day they popped out, and I said they're going to stay out. That time I'd made a few pictures that were moderately successful, so they let them go on that way, sticking out.
Yeah.
I remember when I first trying to get in pictures in Hollywood, that's when I was in the Coconut Grove there, agent took me around to see the head of 20th Century Fox Studio, and I sang a song for him and read some lines for him. He said, very good. But he said, the ears are wingy. I thought he said, the ears are winging. Oh, I said, I'm not all that old. No, I said, I don't mean that your ears stick out. There's no way we could photograph you because the ears would be such a, you know, people would right away look at the ears and the scene would go down the drain. So he said, I'm afraid we can't use you. And later on, I got signed up by Paramount and was doing very well. And we used to go to the same church, Catholic church. And on the way coming back from communion, I'd pass his seat and I'd give it this, you know.
When you look back over your career as a singer, which was the period for you when you thought your voice was at its best, when you were singing best of all?
I think about the period of that down by the river. It sounded, you know, I had some range then, which I don't have now or didn't have in later years.
Yes.
Right in through there, I think maybe I was singing adequately.
Yes. What about when you made a film called The Bells of St. Mary's? How was the voice then?
I don't know. I can't remember.
Well, let's have a reminder of it, because we've got a clip of that.
Oh, bells of St. Mary, we always will love you with your inspiration. We never will fail. Your chimes will forever bring sweet memories of you. So proudly ring out while we sing out, hail, hail, hail.
Now, Ingrid Bergman, great lady and a great actress, she's a great practical joker. In that picture, we had a priest on the set all the time, as they always did in any religious picture, to see that everything was according to the proper dogma and everything. This priest's name was Father Devlin, and he was very severe. We couldn't do anything. It was a delicate relationship, a priest and a nun. And the last day of shooting, it was a very sad scene where she knows she's not going to live much longer, and I come to say goodbye to her, and it's quite a tearful scene. Father Devlin was watching and everybody else. And I didn't know this had been cooked up between Ingrid and the director. I finally said goodbye, and she took me in her arms and gave me a great big wet kiss. Just give it. Father Devlin fainted almost. And then we went back and did the scene right, you know. And I damn near fainted. I couldn't imagine. I thought she'd lost her mind. Just bent me over and gave me one of those big soul jobs, you know.
There was, in fact, in any case, there was some trouble, wasn't there, about the suggestion implicit in the look there.
Yeah.
We saw in that scene
Yeah.
of a love relationship
That's right.
between...
That's right. And Father Devlin was watching it like a hawk.
That, of course, was that was the second time you played Father O'Malley, wasn't it? Because
Yeah.
the first time was in Going My Way.
with Barry Fitzgerald.
He was an extraordinary,
Oh, a great little man. Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a
I
lovely-
remember we had a great deal of difficulty understanding him. With the brogue, he had such a tremendous brogue. You know, he talked like that all the time. You know, talked during the... And he had a very important speech to make from the pulpit, about a 2-minute speech. And Leo McCarey told him, now we're going to make a tape of this, or a record of it, and you make the record and take it home and listen to it tonight and correct it so when you come back and we shoot the scene, it'll be intelligible to the audience and to everybody. So he came back and they started rehearsing the scene, and Leo said, did you play the record? He says, yes, I couldn't understand a bloody word of it.
You played, as I say, this priest part twice. Did people come to think of you as a priest being?
Yeah, they did. I remember one time at a dinner someplace, one of those charity functions where they had a basket lunch, and there was a lot of nice old ladies there. It was Friday, and I just started biting into a great big beef sandwich. She said, Father O'Malley, you can't do that.
Most people, I suppose, when they think of you, think automatically as well of Bob Hope. That's to give him his polite name, isn't it? Yes.
It's been a great relationship.
How did it start, that relationship?
We were both in vaudeville, and one of those times I told you about, he was on the bill once or twice with me, notably at the Capitol Theater one time in New York. He used to do an act with a young lady, a 2-act. Oh, he was a gay one then. Oh, he had the straw hat and the spats and the cane, and they did a few little numbers, and then he did some jokes. And we also belonged to an actors club called the Friars in New York, where everybody congregated when they weren't working, and that's where I knew him, and we started palling around together. And then I went on the radio, and so did he, and I went out to Hollywood first, and then he came 3 or 4 years later, and then I used to work on his radio show, and he'd work on mine, and the writers for the radio show used to cook up these gags about how fat I was, or how hammy he was, or, you know, needling one another. And from that, the people who were at Paramount thought, well, why don't we put these two guys together in a movie? And that's how it developed.
Are you still, in fact, friends with Bob Hope?
Very close, and his wife's a very good friend of my wife. They worked together on some hospitals, and on the Eisenhower Hospital, notably, which is now finished, and on some other projects. She's very civic-minded, Dolores Hope is, and Catherine is too, and we're quite close.
Do you still play golf with him?
Occasionally. Of course, I live in San Francisco now, and I don't see as much of him as I used to, but when I go to Palm Springs, we always have a game, and if he comes to San Francisco, we play.
Is he a good golfer?
He's a good bettor. He makes a game where he can't lose, really.
Really?
He's more like a jurist on the first tee. He wanders out there, and I always take him for a partner because I know that you can't win if you accept the game that he lays out for you. So I said, Bob's my partner, and I sit down. And then he starts working on the opponents about what the handicap should be and how he should play. And in a few minutes, he's got quite a crowd around, caddies and people who are waiting to tee off or people who are coming through. When he gets a sizable audience, then he does a monologue. He'll do 10 or 12 minutes, and by then his opponents are so unnerved that they accept the proposition he's made, which is futile for them. They can't win, and away we go, and we pick up $10 or $20.
Have you ever seen him, he always looks so kind of unflappable in charge of a situation. Have you ever seen him embarrassed, visibly embarrassed, Mr. Hope?
Not very often. Once, yes, once I did, yeah. We made a picture here at the Shepperton Studios, and we both like to play golf, so we tried to find a house in the country, and we found a house out near Windsor somewhere, and the golf course was right between Shepperton and the house. You know, about 15 minutes to the golf course and another 15 home, which was an ideal setup because it was in summer and you had those long English twilights, and we'd finish at 5:30 or 6 o'clock, and we'd just whip to the golf course and play till dark and then home to dinner. So one day we were doing a scene that was supposed to be in a harem, and the villains had captured us, and they decided to give us a soiree, a big orgy with dancing girls and wine and dancing and everything going on in merriment, because they thought they were sending us to our death in a moon capsule. We'd never return. And they hope was stretched out on a chaise lounge, and girls were curling his hair, and another girl was painting his toenails red, and they were doing his nails and carrying on like that. And I was laying on another chaise lounge, and they were squirting the wine into me, and they were covering us with unguents and oil and frankincense and myrrh, and all those things. And we finally finished the scene. The director says, cut, and we whipped over to the golf course, played 13 holes, came back in the locker room there at Wentworth. And you know, the locker rooms in British golf courses are very austere. They just have a bench, a nail to hang your sweater on or your coat on, and a cold basin over in the corner. And we're sitting down, and he's took off his golf shoes and his socks. And I noticed there's two British gentlemen sitting on the bench across from us. Typical British country types, you know, with the stash and the tweed coats. And I saw one of them, his eyes went to Hope's feet, you know. And then he turned to his companion and nudged him, and his companion looked down. And they looked at me, and I... And they looked down again at these red toenails, and finally the one of them said to me, he said, Mr. Crosby, sir, is your friend with the ballet? He put on his shoes and socks, and he went out and didn't say not a word. Not a word.
I don't blame him. Follow that. We talk about professional friendship there. What about the professional rivalry that was drummed up about you and Sinatra when Sinatra first arrived on the scene? Was that rivalry real?
Oh, no. We were very good friends, and as you say, it was drummed up just to get something in the newspapers. I'm sure neither one of us took it as a serious rivalry. I admired his work, and I hope to believe that he admired mine. And we saw a lot of one another. He was on my radio show several times, and I went on a couple of shows he had.
Can I just give you a quote that he said about you once? He's alleged to have said about you. It's a famous one. It says that Sinatra said about you, Crosby happens once in a lifetime. Why does it have to be my lifetime?
Yeah, I've heard that. No, I didn't influence Frankie in any way, and I certainly didn't halt his progress in any way, because he's a brilliant performer, and he's proved it.
I was going to ask you what your assessment was of Sinatra as a singer.
Oh, he's a great singer. He creates a mood, which very few people are able to do. I don't think I create a mood when I sing. Nat Cole could do that. Sinatra does it in a memorable way.
Mm. There's a marvelous moment, well, a marvelous film, High Society, you made together, when we've got I think the best sequence from that was the moment when you collided in song. And that lovely song, Well Did You Ever? Do you remember that?
Yeah,
that lovely scene in the library? Let's have a look at it.
I can't think of any number that illustrates the old axiom that when you have somebody writing something good for you, a piece of material like that, it's got to be pretty good if you just sing what he's written. And that was Cole Porter.
Cole Porter, yeah.
And with a piece of material like that, it had to be fairly entertaining.
It's a beautiful song, but magnificently executed. I mean, it's absolutely perfect. One of my all-time favorite clips from a movie.
Well, it was just there. The material was there, Michael, you know. When you get something like that, you really feel like rolling, you know.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you an impossible question now, and I don't expect a single answer. I don't expect any answer, but of all the titles you've recorded, Bing, which is your favorite?
Well, the easy answer is White Christmas, because it did so much for me, and I'm eternally grateful to Irving Berlin for writing it and making it a song in a picture we did called Holiday Inn.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Because now the song is identified with me, and it's used every Christmas. I do a Christmas show, and there's no way to avoid singing it at the end. And that's the song that really had the most influence on anything I ever accomplished.
Bing Crosby died in 1977 of a heart attack aged 74, and nobody who knew him well was surprised it happened on a golf course. He was an affable, charming and talented man, but also a tough professional. I once worked with him when a young and nervous director kept asking him to retake a song he'd done perfectly first time of asking. And now Bing was known as One Take Crosby, with a dislike of wasting time, so the director was on thin ice. Finally, Bing said to the young man, "Can I ask you why you really want me to do that song again?" And the director said, "Because I think I can do it better." And Bing smiled. "I can't," he said. And that was that. Steel Hand, Velvet Glove. One final observation, the only bit of gossip I know about Bing Crosby is this: he couldn't remember the words to White Christmas, so he had them written on cue cards. Good night.
I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, just like the ones I used to know, where the treetops glisten and children listen to hear sleigh bells in the snow. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, with every Christmas card I write. May your days be merry and bright, and may all your Christmases